City Council Committee on Public Health, Safety, and Environment, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, met in Council Chamber on May 5th, 2025, at 6 o'clock. For the purpose of discussing current snow removal practices, policies, and challenges for the city, as well as discussion of enforcement and a review of existing ordinances and related fines. Absent from the committee are Councilors Harvey and Davis. Joining us from the Committee of the Whole is Councilor Morcillo. And joining us from the city staff is City Solicitor Renard, Building Commissioner, Inspectional Services Director Orfanos, and DPS Director Joden. And I am actually going to throw this over to Councilor Stott, who put the order in. Would you like to take it from here? Yeah, I just threw it over to you. And just really want to appreciate all the work that Councilor Stott and Solicitor Renard did, because we actually have a couple of options that might make this efficient. Councilor Stott.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Cohen. So a recap, I think everybody is aware of what we're doing, but a recap for the public that may be listening along. Back in March, I put an order in at the council to do a review of snow removal practices and fines for the past season, and to listen to any ideas or solutions as to how to improve the process. I know for myself in Ward 6, it was perhaps it felt like a snowier season, but if it wasn't even a snowier season, it was just, I think the city inspector just mentioned earlier, it was a lot of smaller storms, which kind of wreaked a little bit of havoc on snow removal and caught a lot of people off guard. So I wanted to do a recap to see what best practices we could perhaps fine tune or get ideas from others. I know for myself personally, there are specific problem properties within Ward 6 that are just frustrating every year. I'll call one out, the public storage at the corner of Boston and Bridge. It is cheaper for them to just pay the fine versus getting a snow removal company to come and remove the snow. So I personally was curious in the having the discussion of possibly having a different tiered system of fines for residential versus commercial, but I know that there are other ideas out there as well, and wanted to just really get the data on how much we are fining, how much is being reported, and hear from my fellow colleagues and those in the city staff is what their ideas might be for perhaps giving this process a little more teeth. So that's my recap that I'll give. I will start this out that the city solicitor did provide some language right before tonight's meeting about some ways that we could go in language edits. I will say, though, before that, I'm hoping we could perhaps have well, I don't know how to say your last name. Ms. Orfanos from the building department you provided me via email some information about the tickets that were issued last season, but if you could provide that number for others that might not be aware of it, as well as some additional context to that, how many are paid, how many repeat offenders, if you have any of that other data, how your staff kind of handles the ticketing process. Obviously, it's based off of complaints received to your office, I'm assuming, but just I'm sure you have some additional feedback on that as well.
Hi. So we issued 117 snow tickets violation, whether it was ice, snow removal, or being thrown in the street, removed from one property to another without not being put on their own property. So the fees that were paid, we got reimbursed for, it was $3,425 of tickets that were issued. 2,025 have been paid. We still have $1,135 that are still due and not paid. And we have $275 that were abated. If they went to court, and then for whatever reason, those things were abated. If they were repeat offenders, I don't have that number with me. I didn't put down how many have been repeated, but we're going to try and keep track of that. I don't have a system that shows that. We're trying to keep a way to track the streets by flagging them, maybe by different ways. The amount that were paid, I got from collectors, you know, from the tickets amount, that's how I know how many got paid and how many were not paid. I asked Sarah from collectors to get the data. And it's for $25. Recently, one of the inspectors, 5 tickets were appealed, and the court magistrate did pay those, so they didn't have to pay for those tickets. And we are taking pictures as we're doing enforcement, so when they go to the court or they appeal our tickets, we are showing that there was snow or no ice was removed. Sometimes they'll go and say it wasn't my property, but we're trying to keep up with that. And we're putting a lot of time. And the ticket's only $25 to go up and down. We don't mind because we're trying to make the streets safer and the sidewalks, so it's not even the point. But I think that we should definitely raise the fees on this to make it more, hopefully, that they feel pressured that, you know, the amount's very little. And the council said that for $25, they don't feel like they want to do sidewalks.
Thank you for that. Can I ask one follow-up to the information that you provided? So $25 is for the first offense and then $100 for each subsequent offense?
No, it's $50.
50 for each subsequent offense. How often do you issue those subsequent, like, I probably don't have the data in front of you because I didn't ask for this earlier, but of the total number of fines, do you have an idea of how many were first and subsequents, or do you not issue as many subsequent offenses?
They will, especially if the complaints are coming in. We make sure, and especially if it's a dangerous property. We try to focus on, especially like all properties in Salem, but schools, intersections, you know, and especially ones that were brought to our property. If they weren't doing it, we were making sure we were going out each day and continuing the finding. And sometimes it would show some compliance. I don't know if anybody knows when you would send us some information, and we try to work with them with a warning, go and say, you need to clean the sidewalk. If we don't reach them, we leave a warning, and then it would be a ticket and then continue.
One more follow-up question for that regards to process. So you mentioned the abatement or appeals process. How does that work now?
So we have the new 40U tickets. So we have a new hearing officer. So they would, if they appeal the ticket, it would go to the hearing officer. And then it would be up to the hearing officer, depending on the situation. It could be, like we discussed, could be an elderly person or something. It could be a situation where they couldn't get to it or whatever. So it's up to the hearing officer to decide if they want to abate a ticket. If someone is, besides hearing officer or not being abated, if a ticket's not paid now, it will be leaned onto the property. So that's why we did the adoption of the 40U ticket, which at least this will have some subsequent consequence on the property owner that doesn't want to comply with our ordinances.
Thanks. So just to confirm that last statement, doesn't want to comply with the ordinances, including paying the fines that are issued based off of the not complying, then a lien can be placed on their property.
Yes.
And we had this conversation earlier, so just for clarity for everyone else, that's based because it's a 40U fine or fine based off of the 40U ordinance state law. Yes. What other limitations are there on that?
So just to back up a little bit, the tickets that Ms. O'Connell is referring to are tickets that were not issued under 40U. We just started the process this last month to issue tickets under 40U so that they can be liened. Going forward, the snow tickets will be liened. The good thing about 40U is that you can lien, but the bad thing about it is there's a uniformity provision. So we had talked about, like, some communities have different rates for residential versus commercial. Under 40U, they need to be uniform throughout the zone. So while it has its pros and cons. So that would be one of the cons, that you can't have the different rates for a commercial property that's next to a residential property.
It's a physical zone. It's not a zone based off of, okay.
It's a zone.
You can't have characteristics within that zone. Okay. That's all I have for now.
Councilor Marcillo, but before I recognize you, I just want to recognize that Councilor Varela is joining us online. Councilor Marcillo.
Thank you, Chair. Fula, so just to go back to the fines that have been sent out, you don't have a breakdown as to which ones, how many are commercial and how many are private property?
I do not. I didn't do a breakdown on that.
Is it easy to do? Would that be easy to do?
We'd have to look at the addresses where we issued it and then determine it.
Okay. And just to follow up, you also don't know how many were repeat violations?
I can name a few that were as commercial, Walgreens, public storage, Highland Ave, we did Burger King. I was trying to think of that whole strip. Well, might have been all set, but I know we got Burger King because they didn't clean it at all up there.
So are you talking about on Highland Avenue, that mall area? And they, I mean, I don't want to get into the weeds too much, but do they individually take care of their property, or is it just one company that does the whole thing? That's interesting that,
I'm not sure if they're,
okay.
because we went right to Burger King because the other ones were okay, so I'm.
Yeah, interesting. All right, okay. And the abatement reasons, you mentioned elderly people that may not have been able to take care of their sidewalk. Is that?
In the past, when some of my tickets have been appealed, I've gone to court, and they appeal it at the court, and we've had a couple of elderly, or they couldn't find anybody to clean their property. That I would understand sometimes. But it's up to the magistrate to decide that. If any were abated this year, it's from the court. We had 5 appeals, and the magistrate did allow those as warnings.
And do we ever find out what the reasons are for this year?
Those I don't know. My inspector had gone to that hearing. I didn't go to that one at the court.
I'm just wondering, like, we're all here trying to fix the problem, right? I'm just wondering if the city and the schools can do a better job of trying to find people. I mean, I do understand the elderly issue. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a way to do that because it is putting kids in the street. I mean, even if it's an older person and they haven't shoveled their sidewalk, it's still a problem, right? So I understand the abatement issue, but yeah, I mean, trying to figure this out is the key, right? Did you do many fines for the ice?
We did.
You did?
I had a lot that came to the office and said that their sidewalk was clean. And Mike and Gail and Greg, who do, they have all the pictures.
Yeah.
That's not clean.
Right,
And we show
right.
them other ones that were clean, like it's a difference.
I mean, I have to say that was
It's more dangerous.
yeah, absolutely. And it was tough. That was a hard couple of days there. Okay.
Right. It was melt or freeze. It was just like,
It was pretty difficult. So is there a policy within your department that the next snowstorm, you hit those same properties after the snowstorm to see if they've cleared their property?
so
Mostly the commercial properties, like
especially the commercial,
Yeah.
but the repeat offenders.
Yeah.
But I told them to make a list, and we're going to try and flag it on our computer and see as it comes up and see if they already issued that way. If they did try to appeal, say, a ticket, at least you can show the hearing officer. This was already done. They've already had their warning, and there should be no warning.
Yeah. So if we keep the fine levels the same, or if we increase them, and let's say that there's a commercial property that just refuses to spend the money on cleaning the sidewalks properly, and we issue them repeated fines, and it gets up to a couple $100s. What is the process for attaching a lien, and what does that do, and how does that affect them for a couple $100s?
So it goes on the tax bill. So what I'm recommending that we double the fines, so go from 25 to 50, and the subsequent offense to 100. With Vula and her staff, now that she's got a full staff, we'll have the ability to mark them as they are, the offenders this year, go out and check, be more proactive, get out there, and get that second $100 and the next $100 and the next $100. We'll have an impact. We have our own hearing officer now that will have the availability of the data right here in our own database. So I'd like to give it double the fines, and then revisit this next year and see how we did.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Was West Ave Lafayette Street corner, I think, is a repeat offender.
Did they clear it after our tickets?
I think you gave him a couple of tickets, actually. Before we get into the actual, whether the committee agrees on raising the fines or not, which I'm personally very much in favor of. I'd love Director Joden to come up and talk a little bit about what the city does. I know Councilor Harvey wasn't able to make it, and he expressed a concern to me that, are we doing all the parks or whatever? And you and I had a conversation, Director, about, that you have kind of a priority list. Would you like to come up and talk the way that's done, especially in the event that you're short-staffed?
Sure. So thank you. Ray Joden, Salem DPS. So when we were doing sidewalks across the city, we set a priority listing of targeting sidewalks near schools. We actually have a dedicated worker that goes out during the storm to clear the storms and then works well into after the ending of the snowfall. We then start focusing after the storm on what we call medium priority sidewalks, our parks along parks and other avenues that are not mainly traveled for school routes. Sometimes those take well within second or third days past the initial snowstorm. But we end up treating and plowing the majority of the sidewalks within 6 hours of the conclusion of the storm.
Councilor Jerzel and then Councilor Stott.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank you on Noah Memorial Drive. It did take a couple days, but you got right on it. That whole sidewalk, a lot of people do walk that. Thank you for doing that too. I saw you use the blue stuff for like when it was ice, and that seemed to work really well. I don't know what, it was blue sand or
Was this on?
There was kind of like a blue thing that
Okay.
seemed to work. I don't know what material it was, but it seemed to work really well.
Is this on Memorial?
Yeah,
Okay. That was, yes, that was calcium chloride.
that seemed to work really well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Ray, for all of your work. There seemed to be some snafus with the bike lanes, but I appreciate the effort to get those in and get those cleared and keeping that a priority as well, treating it like the roadway. I have a question about the interaction between the two. So the DPW is obviously responsible for clearing. You have your priority sidewalks. Is that map still available? There used to be, okay.
Yep.
And the Snow Central, priority sidewalks, streets, all of that.
Yep.
And I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, your department handles the items received via snow at salem.com?
Yeah, they changed the new web address, so it's like salem.gov, but yes.
Okay, cool. How is the interaction between those that are reported as a public property and DPW would take care of versus ones that the inspector would need to go out? Like, how can you just explain to me the process? Because as someone that knows about the process, it seems kind of muddy to me, and it's kind of hard to explain to the public how to report sidewalks that are not cleared. If they're publicly owned sidewalks, like in front of City Hall, for example, you would email snow@salem.com. And that was just kind of my entire communication, send everything to snow@salem.com.
Right.
But then the message got a little muddled up last year to also send messages directly to the building inspector if it was a fine would be needed for a private property.
Right. So any snow communication should be sent to snow.com. And that way it doesn't get lost. It actually resides right in snow.com. The building department and DPS constantly monitor that. And that way we're able to respond directly through snow.com. If you do send it through a personal email, there is a chance that it may be misplaced or not. It's very rare. But if we keep all the single line of communication well within that, that's kind of the best practice.
I'm going to interject for the public that's not watching. The building commissioner did nod her head that they are monitoring this along with DPS.
So during the snow event, we actually have multiple workers monitoring that. That's why we kick people to that directly. So that way we see it live right when it's happening and we can address it or address the email directly.
That's great to hear. I don't know, was it just me that message got a little muddled last year? Yeah, okay. So that's great to hear, because I agree, one line is much more clearer. My concern with the email, though, is how can you report on that?
What do you mean?
Like the number of requests received, repeat offenders, like that just seems like a really manual process of going in. Like, I guess I'll ask it a different way. Why are we not using See-Click-Fix?
I believe, again, I don't have a great answer for that, other than snow.com is easier for us to respond during the event.
Like reply to the email versus
Correct.
Slack.
It's direct communication, where See-Click-Fix can be muddled. It goes into a category where we may not be able to see it. It gets assigned to somebody else. Snow.com is a single form where we're able to see it and respond as quickly as possible.
Is there any way to see a report? I mean, I don't believe so, but a piece of feedback that I receive often is you send it to snow.com and you hear nothing. So to not be able to reply directly,
Yeah.
I don't know if I fully get that. And again, I don't want to like put you on the spot here for this, but I just think the tools of being able to have a simple snow category in See-Click-Fix and being able to reply correctly or quickly and easily might be something that we should probably look into again, just because it can be frustrating for some to send an email and then hear nothing back. And at least See-Click-Fix has a way of like tracking that information as the user, as the sender, to be like, oh no, wait, I really did send it, versus you might get multiple inquiries to the email on the same thing because the person isn't patient and keeps, I haven't heard back. It's been 12 hours or 24 hours. And, you guys are just trying to work through your queue. And that's why that's kind of the benefit I see from See-Click-Fix. It kind of eliminates that and can group them all together. But I would love to see data similar to the fines that are issued, data of what the complaints are coming in from the city, or coming into the city around properties, snow removal.
Sure. We'll look at that.
Okay, I do have Councilor Varela has his hand up, so. Councilor Varela, you can
All right. Thank you, Chair Cohen. Not being a member of the committee, through you to our city solicitor and our building commissioner. Sorry if I missed this. It's really hard to hear from my end on the meeting. My question was, as far as enforcement, what's the timeline between a snowstorm and when you guys would start to enforce the cleaning of sidewalks? I know that in Ward 7, we do have some problem properties, one specifically being the Marblehead Water Department that has about, I'd say, 200 yards of frontage on 1A that is consistently not cleared after snowstorms.
So once the snow stops, 6 hours after it stops, we can start our enforcement. Depends on the time. If it's 3 a.m, we're not going to be up. It'll be the next morning when we start.
Alrighty. Very good. Thank you.
Councilor Marcel.
Thank you, Chair. Ray, both of you, I guess, just a little pet peeve. So my big thing is the routes to school and making sure that the kids can get there. Part of that is being able to get to the walk lights. And that, I think, was a problem this year more than I've seen it in the past. Especially, where I live at Dalton and Broad Street, those lights were very difficult to get to. And it took the city a while to push back the snowbanks and get the cutout so that kids could get onto the sidewalk from the snowbanks. This has been better before, and I was just curious: was it an employment problem, or do you know? Did things change? Because there used to be a Bobcat that came out, and then the plows, whatever the big equipment is, and they would make sure that the banks were pulled back and the crosswalks were clear to get to the sidewalk. And
Well, I think it's also a compliance issue, especially with that, because homeowners are responsible for the curb cuts and in front of their property, especially where crossings. So,
the problem is when the plow is putting feet of snow
yeah,
in front of that curb, it's hard to tell the homeowner that they're responsible for that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that email that I sent when I did that whole loop on Jefferson and Wilson, it was like curb cuts that were a problem. People would use their snow blowers or shovel, and they would forget to cut into the street. So, it was just hard to get back onto the sidewalk once you cross the street. And that was like right on Wilson across from the high school. So it's just, it is a pet peeve of mine because the kids are out there walking and so it's more than just the sidewalks. It's actually the access. I don't know. Good luck. I think you guys actually are doing a good job. It's just the little things that, yeah.
Councilor Varela, you still have your hand up. Do you have another question? Oh, thank you. Councilor Jerslow.
Thank you, Chair. I do also have a issue with the corners. Is there any way you can educate the plow drivers? I live on a corner, and some of them, like Councilor Marcello stated, they are pretty high, and when it freezes over, it's almost impossible to try to, I don't know if there's a way to educate plow drivers to be a little more cognizant of, plowing up the snow on corners, especially like an elderly. And the next question would be for Fuller. What about elderly people when you have to give them a violation or warning? Is there a list of people you can include with that would actually go out? I saw a lot on the neighborhood Facebook pages, people reaching out, people that are disabled, people that are elderly that can't, but they don't know where to go to get somebody to hire. Is there a list of people you could give the residents that would go out and shovel for them?
We do not have a list, but a good suggestion would be that the high school, if the seniors have hours they need to fill. When my daughter was in school, she volunteered, and one was shoveling and the other one was at the food bank at the table. There's different things. I think that might be a good program for the juniors and seniors to get their hours. And this would help seniors.
Great. Thank you both.
I believe a couple of years ago, the high school had something that we were able to broadcast out. Do you remember that?
I believe it was a program through the ROTC program. They used to have a shoveling program over there. I'm unaware that they're offering it anymore, but I think that could be a good place to start.
It's a great idea. Since the leader of the ROTC lives across the street from me, I'll ask him. I have a question for the solicitor. If the will of this committee is to double the fines, is that something we can do as a recommendation tonight, or do we have to bring a separate ordinance change it?
So what did the order say?
Do you want me to read it? Yeah, is it okay, Chair, if I read it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it did include the whole ordinance discussion. It said, meet to discuss current snow removal practices, policies, and challenges for the city, as well as discussion of enforcement and a review of existing ordinances and related fines.
So if this body were to make a to come back to you, what I could do is I could file it at the next meeting, so that when the amendment itself, I could file it so we get it on the agenda as a new item essentially.
Terrific. Before, do any other councilors have? Councilor Marcillo.
Sorry. Since it includes challenges, do you guys want to take a few minutes to talk about the challenges that you see and things that that you're trying to work on, or things that you could use help on? What are your challenges?
During a storm, we're all out doing the tickets, and it's hard. It's a big city, and we try to do as much as we can, especially the ones that are coming in. And said the school areas, we could use some help from enforcement, going out and giving tickets, but we'll do our best. We can't hit every street in the storm. It's impossible. We'll do our best. Challenges are that compliance, just tickets alone. So hopefully this will push the compliance along the way, and the repeat offenders. And that's what I wanted to talk through. So if we don't write in a year, so if it's a violation that continues, can you just go jump to the next fee if we don't write in 1 year? So if it's a repeat offender and they've already got, say it's $50, now you jump to that because every subsequent, we don't put a year.
I have to look at that. That's a good point.
Especially repeat offenders. So if
I'm
they're
gonna have to-
continuing.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look at this, at the 40U statute, see if there's any cases on that. Look.
Just an idea.
Right?
So I guess if I would have to make any comments, it would be just realize that the plows are out there working hard, and we're trying to keep the roadways open as best as we can. And any assistance in clearing their sidewalks, including the openings to the sidewalks, if they could try to do their best, that would definitely help us out and not throw it out in the street.
And also in the corners, I do want to say that it is difficult for them to control during a storm, and the corners is where it ends up. And unfortunately, if your property surrounds that, and it's unfortunate that an owner is on a corner property before it freezes to try to have it removed.
When I was the recycling coordinator, they gave me a ticket book, and it actually had recycling $25. And unfortunately, I couldn't use it because of the ordinance. But I'd be glad if you want to give me a book. Okay, before we make any motions, any input from the public? Please come up, and if you feel like it, state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Lydia King. I live at 4 Forest Avenue. I support doubling the fines. I think that's a great idea. I think a lot of people that I've spoken to in my neighborhood and around Salem would also, I think that'd be a very popular thing. It's a lot of repeat offenders. It's like the repeat offenders are the problems, so that'd be great. I also, I've been walking around Salem a lot lately, and I, both recently and also in the winter, and where I live in, by Lafayette and Canal Street, I have noticed that the sidewalks so obviously there's a lot of sidewalks that have been recently repaved, and then there's the sidewalks that have been not as recently repaved, and the ones that have been not as recently repaved often have like their own version of like sidewalk potholes, right? And I feel like that is where a lot of the, like in the many days after a storm, you're still seeing ice pooling in those like sidewalk potholes. And I know that is where I've definitely seen myself and others like have a lot of almost slips. So whenever, I know like during storms, there's a lot to prioritize, but in the time between storms, if you are trying to prioritize like where to check for ice, like less recently paved sidewalks could be a good additional thing to look at, just because I know that the ice just pools there in those little sidewalk potholes. So just an idea for that, but thank you.
Thank you. That seems to be it. I will entertain a motion.
Would you like me to make a motion? I just want to confirm it. I mean, I think it does seem to be the will to double. I just had a question about the 40U. Is the $100, that's the maximum?
No, $300 is the maximum for an ordinance violation. Like indicated earlier, there are two statutes that govern sidewalks in snow. But the most recent one is the Chapter 40, which has a cap of $300 for ordinance violations.
And what's the one that we're under? It's 80 something?
Well, there's 85, which is the $50, but that has not been updated in 100 years.
Okay.
So I feel comfortable following the Chapter 40 maximum of $300. So that top fine could go to a maximum of $300.
But it has to be for the whole zone. It can't be residential, commercial.
Correct.
Okay, that was the gist. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
But Beth, would that be each day, right? So if they're in violation each day, like if you start at 50, 100, and then go to 300, it would be 300 till they clear the sidewalk. So hopefully that will get some commercial properties that don't want that.
Okay. With that noted, if there's no request for additional data to have further discussions, I would make a motion that we recommend to the full council that ordinance section 3813 be revised or amended, or actually I would make a motion for the city solicitor to draft edits for the ordinance to show an increase of fines in section 3813 from 25 to 50 and 50 to 100, and in sections 3814 for adding subsequent offense language for $100.
Counselor Stott moves for the solicitor file to revise 3813 to increase the fines from 25 to 50 and 50 to 100 for each subsequent offense, and 3814 that the first offense to change for 50 for the first offense and 100 for each subsequent offense. Do we have a second? Seconded by Councilor Jerzo. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor? 3-0. Before I take another motion, first of all, thank you, City Solicitor, for doing this. And we're trusting that the department heads will get us the information that we've asked for at your earliest convenience. How's that? Everyone's nodding their head. Okay.
Councilor, I was planning on, so we're going to report this on the next meeting, which is this Thursday. Then I'll file it for the next meeting. Does that work?
Okay.
So
You
that's
want it for this meeting.
22nd.
So do we need another motion to report this back to committee? So
No.
to council?
You're going to
Yeah.
report it out to council, what you're asking me to do, and then I will do it for the next meeting.
Okay. So it technically then stays in the committee.
Okay, so
Does it or does it not?
No.
I'm just,
That's the out is the ask for the language.
recommendation
Okay.
is to,
That's what I thought. I got a little confused. Okay. I'll make another motion. I'll try to get this one right. Motion to adjourn.
motion. Okay, all in favor? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Cinco de Mayo. Go for it.